Can you do a video about Freedom Nadd? Alright, so Freedom Nadd, he only exists in legends, and 4 centuries before the Great Sith War, he arrives at Ossus to become a Jedi. His natural proficiency and deep understanding of the Force really impressed his masters, and they believed that he was destined for greatness. However, when the time came for him to be promoted to Knight, Nadd was unexpectedly passed over. Confused and frustrated, he sought answers from his master, Mata Tremaine, but she remained silent, forcing him to find the truth for himself. Enraged by something that he thought was a betrayal, he announces that he is a Jedi and he challenges his master to a duel. In the duel, he manages to strike her down, only to then realize too late that it was all a test. Overcome with grief and anger, he convinces himself that the Jedi set him up to fail. Abandoning the Jedi Order, he then sets out to become the most powerful Sith sorcerer in history. Nadd's quest then leads him to Ashes Ree, where he discovers a Sith holocron of King Adas. Searching through the ruins of the Sith Empire, he eventually learned of the exiled Dark Lord Nagasado on Yavin 4. Battling through the Massassi warriors, he then proves his strength and he is invited into the temple, where he was then rewarded with becoming the apprentice to Nagasado. Under his tutelage, he then mastered Sith magic and dark rituals. Once he had learned all that he could, Nadd then betrays Sado and kills him. Now seeking a world to rule, Nadd conquers Onderon, using Adas's holocron to overthrow its rulers and declare himself king. He steeped Onderonian society in Sith teachings. To control the population, he developed advanced weaponry and he exiled anybody that opposed him. These exiles had adapted to the wilderness, they tamed the beast and went on to become known as the Beast Riders. Despite Freedom Nadd's immense dark power, he was never able to suppress their rebellion. But for over a century, Freedom Nadd's oppressive rule over Onderon eventually drew attention to the Jedi. They go over to investigate, and after an intense battle, Freedom Nadd was defeated. But his spirit lingered on, influencing the planet's rulers. His tomb was beneath the Izz's palace, and it became a nexus of dark side energy. King Omin, who was a descendant of Nadd, he sought his guidance with Sith sorcery, while Queen Aminoa, initially unaware, became corrupted herself. But Freedom Nadd's ultimate goal was resurrection, hoping that a successor would master Sith alchemy to create himself a new body. To this end, he pitted Omin and Aminoa against each other, but their conflict escalated into open war. Seeking aid, Aminoa unintentionally alerted the Jedi. They arrive to mediate, but when the negotiations fail, she calls upon Nadd's power. But the Jedi Master's arrival, who's Arca Jeth, turns the tide. Discovering Freedom Nadd's tomb, the Jedi then purge his influence, and Aminoa, who is deprived of the dark power that was sustaining her, is then killed. Omin, determined to reclaim Onderon, he launches an attack with Nadd's guidance, capturing the Jedi Arca Jeth. As the Jedi reinforcements arrive, the Republic then laid siege to Onderon, forcing Omin in a desperate stand. Meanwhile, the aristocrats from the Empress Teta system, they had arrived seeking Sith knowledge, but before they could learn much, the Jedi then storm Omin's stronghold, fleeing the Jedi Arca Jeth. Seeing Omin as a lost cause, Nadd then abandons him to his fate. But before being banished by Arca Jeth, he gifted the aristocrats these Sith artifacts, recognizing their potential. Now the Jedi entombed Nadd's remains on Duxon, a nearly indestructible Mandalorian iron crypt, hoping isolation would prevent resurgence. His Sith artifacts were then taken to Ossus for study, but his spirit did remain active, warning Ulic Qel-Droma of the dark side and prophesying his fall. But even in death, Nadd then trained the aristocrats, guiding them more towards Sith magic. But under his influence, they staged a coup in the Empress Teta system, forming the dark side cult known as the Krath. Their war between the Jedi and Republic culminated in an ambush on Deniba. This is where Arca Jeth was killed. But seeking vengeance, Qel-Droma then infiltrates the Krath, but ultimately falls to the dark side, fulfilling his prophecy. Meanwhile, there was another ambitious Jedi called Exar Kun. He was fascinated with Sith lore, so he seeks out Nadd's tomb on Duxon. There, Nadd's spirit then leads him to Korriban, where he was trapped and nearly killed, but this was to force him to embrace the dark side. Kun then became Nadd's apprentice and continued his training on Yavin 4. And when captured by the Massassi for a sacrifice, he seized a Sith amulet, unlocking immense power. But then, seeing Kun as his new vessel, Nadd had revealed his true intent, to use him to resurrect himself. However, Exar Kun was unwilling to be controlled, so he turns on his master and he destroys his spirit. But before he could fade away into chaos, Nadd warns the aristocrats and Qel-Droma, naming them his Sith heirs. That's all I have on Freedom Nadd. Hope it helped.